different guest, a Packers game of the past. And I'm excited to talk about this one today with our guest from ESPN Madison. He is Alex Strouf. And the game we're talking about today, Stroufy, comes from 2018, the season opening game in 2018. If you remember that game as a fan, we'll give you a quick refresher. It was against the Chicago Bears. Aaron Rodgers got hurt early, and there was a heck of a comeback in the second half. And there's some definite things in that first half that I definitely forgot about. But going into this game, I remember being very excited for this game because 2017 was kind of a lost season. It was the second year in which Aaron Rodgers had injured a collarbone, missed a significant chunk of time, tried to come back late in the season against the Carolina Panthers. Game didn't go well. Packers missed the playoffs, so it didn't go quite as well as the season the first time he injured his collarbone, in which the Packers did beat the Bears at the end of the season in 2013, made the playoffs. And the Packers were off to a good start in 2017. So you're thinking, all right, here we go, 2018, we're ready to rock, we're ready to go. And that's the feeling I remember heading into that game. It was a Sunday night game, so you had to wait all day to get that season opening game. What do you remember about heading into that game as a fan?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me, Gabe. This is a fun idea. I'm really excited to listen to the rest of these. But watching this game back, I remember the roller coaster of emotions I had watching this game, right? Like at halftime, I remember in 2018, I cut like an iPhone-style WWE-esque promo saying how the season was over. Because Aaron Rodgers was not – I didn't think he was coming back into this game.
He went on a cart. He went into the locker room on a cart.
Absolutely. So you thought, okay, well, just like last year, season's over. This is going to be, a highway to hell week one. And then he comes back and lights up the Bears defense in that fourth quarter. But that was one of the games with the biggest roller coaster of emotions in the recent decade or last 2 decades for me as a Packers fan. It was the kickoff to season 100 for the Packers. The Packers had just taken the lead in the rivalry, as Al Michaels talked about in his opening soliloquy at the beginning of the game. And I just remember all the excitement and hype around this game, as you mentioned, right? Sunday night, got to wait all day for week one, the most historic rivalry in the NFL. And then you think the season's over. And then he comes back after halftime and lights up the Bears. And like Mitch Trubisky looked terrific in the first half of this game, which I don't think happened again in his career. They gave all that money to Trey Burton, who had thrown the Philly special touchdown pass a couple months prior in the Super Bowl. And you thought, oh man, they've got this great tight end. And he couldn't even make it through 2 years of his 4-year deal. So and Clay Matthews was still a Packer. I didn't realize Clay Matthews was still a Packer in 2018.
Yeah. Clay Matthews was on the team. Randall Cobb could still run in 2018. Right, yeah. There's a lot of familiar faces that you see. And this was the first year for the Bears of Matt Nagy. And they ended up having a good year. Of course, it ended horrifically for them in the playoffs, which we all laugh about as Packers fans because that's the joy we had to take out of that season. But, I mean, to your point, this game starts off with the Bears marching down the field with Mitch Trubisky. First series ever with Matt Nagy calling the plays. Mitch Trubisky's in year number 2, and you're going, ooh, the Bears can move the football. It was a little terrifying watching that back going, I don't remember the Bears. Clearly there were mistakes that were made. You had to be down, the 20 points to have the historic comeback. But it didn't quite happen the way I remembered it. A lot of it was just Mitch Trubisky and the Bears offense going out there and taking it to the Packers defense, who had a first-year defensive coordinator in Mike Pettin.
Yeah, people forget the Mike Pettin hangover, right? Because this is the year, as you alluded to at the top, that McCarthy gets fired. But Pettin hung around for 2 more years with Green Bay. And I think people forget, I totally blanked that out of my memory that Mike Pettin was ever the D coordinator of the Packers. And yeah, you've got Muhammad Wilkerson had a couple nice plays.
Yeah.
I forgot he had a short tenure as a Packer. Clay Matthews, Nick Perry. This is Jair's first game as a Packer. He had the big pass breakup to end the game in the fourth quarter. So there's just so many angles of this that I guess I had forgotten 5 years removed from it, Gabe, where I'm sitting there going, oh yeah, Mike Pettin and Mike McCarthy were on the same staff. And Jair and Clay Matthews actually had some crossover. And Ty Montgomery, by the way, who had a nice return on the opening kickoff, that was the last Packers jersey I purchased, was Ty Montgomery during his time as a returner and a running back as the Packers. And we know how that ended up. Yeah, rub your face. That is the correct reaction to have, because he was traded later that year.
Yeah, I was about to say his tenure as a Packer ended later that season when he tried to return a kick against
Yeah.
the lot. And this is that was the game that kind of turned the season for me when he
Totally.
tried. The Packers are down 2 points if you don't remember this game. And maybe it would be another one to do a good repackables on because of how frustrating that Ty Montgomery attempt at a kick return was. And then he fumbles and shows zero remorse for it, despite being told, hey, if that ball's in the end zone, take a knee. That was made clear after the game, and then he ends up getting traded. Packers lost that game. The season ended up getting lost. Why did you buy a Ty Montgomery jersey?
Because so I worked at a lid store in Green Bay,
By the way,
from the stadium.
By the way, this is coming from someone who once had an Atari Bigby jersey, right? So like
I loved Atari Bigby.
It's coming from a little bit of an accusatory place, but also like a little bit of an understanding place.
Yeah, but like we were so comfortable in the tenure of Rodgers. So everybody and their grandma had an Aaron Rodgers jersey. And I worked at the lids up the road from Lambeau Field at this point. This was like my summer job in college.
Okay.
And I got discounts on jerseys, and they had a Ty Montgomery jersey. And this was after, a couple of years prior, if I'm not mistaken, the run the table year where he made the swap from wide receiver to running back. Lil Wayne said he was going to name his son Ty Montgomery. And I was like, all right, I'm buying into the hype. This guy's going to be a total stud. He's going to be Deebo Samuel before Deebo Samuel. And obviously it did not work out that way. So I bought a Deebo Samuel jersey from my former employer. Yeah, that's that story.
I mean, shout out to Ty Montgomery because I think he's still in the league.
He is.
The fact that he's still hanging around, good on him that he's been able to keep it going despite being traded from the Packers this season. But one of the things I did not remember about this game was Rodgers didn't get hurt early. It happened like halfway through that second quarter is when the injury happened. I guess I assumed that the injury happened a lot earlier, but he was garbage. The Packers offense the Packers offense actually looked better with DeShone Kizer after Kizer came in. The Packers didn't move the ball. Aaron Rodgers was 3 of 7 for like 13 yards.
Fair.
The offense was bad in the first quarter and a half. They just couldn't figure anything out.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I'm with you on that. I thought it was like the first or second possession in the first quarter that Rodgers went out. And then it felt like a really long time DeShone Kizer was in the game. And it still felt that way, even though it was only the second quarter, because Khalil Mack just had an absolute field day, right? He had the interception, he had the fumble, he had the sack. I mean, it was the almighty debut for Khalil Mack. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was that his Defensive Player of the Year season, or was that am I just feeling that way because it was a Defensive Player of the Year game for Khalil Mack against DeShone Kizer?
It was certainly a Defensive Player of the Year game. Again, a great Bears debut. He's kind of rotating in and out. He's not really playing the whole game, but he's still affecting it. And I'm not going to lie. So I do remember after watching it back, maybe I had kind of blacked out the memory of DeShone Kizer, but in the game when he went in, I remember talking myself into him a little bit because Rodgers was out. You have to remember the state of mind that Packers fans would have been in at this point, Stroufy, because we had just watched an entire half season, more or less, of Brett Hundley. Right. And it was bad. It wasn't good. Like it was, I think the only good thing I remember from Brett Hundley was a game against the Steelers. The Packers still lost that game. Like that was the only good game that Brett Hundley had. So like DeShone Kizer comes in, I'm going, well, at least this guy has experience. Yeah, he was 0-15 as a starter last year, but that was with a terrible team. That was with an awful team in the Cleveland Browns. This guy at least has a little bit of experience. He's a second-round pick. Maybe, under Aaron Rodgers, he's learned a little bit. He's got Devontae Adams, who had a good year the year before. He's got Randall Cobb, Jimmy Graham, who obviously wasn't very good as a Packer. But
that didn't work out.
No, it didn't work out. But like there were things to talk yourself into. And the first 3 or 4 passes weren't bad. Like he had completed a nice third down pass that picked up a chunk play to Randall Cobb. And you're going, ooh, okay, maybe this isn't going to be horrible. And then Khalil Mack decided to ruin it all with a strip sack where he ended up with the ball and then even had a pick 6 to add to it. Like it all went down in flames so quickly. But I do remember like talking myself into DeShone Kizer going, okay, you know what? If Aaron Rodgers is out for the year, at least maybe DeShone Kizer can keep this thing afloat.
Yeah, and Aaron Rodgers couldn't even keep this thing afloat, which was the sad reality of the 2018 season, right? Because I think he started every game, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe he didn't start week 17 or whatever. But, like, DeShone Kizer was a better alternative, you're right, than Brett Hundley, who I think they traded like a week or two before this game. And of course, if you go back a few years, that 2013 season when Rodgers was off the field with injuries, you had Seneca Wallace and Matt Flynn and Scott Tolzien.
Yes.
And you just had that horrible list. I think Vince Young might have made a quick cameo at some point too that year.
So Vince Young I don't think Vince Young made the roster. He was on the team.
The off-season one. Okay.
Yeah, he was on the team, but he didn't he didn't end up making the squad after training camp. And then Seneca Wallace played the rest of the Bears game after Rodgers got hurt. Was hurt himself. Then we got the Scott Tolzien era. Then I don't even remember how Matt Flynn became available, but Matt Flynn became available and did some cool things. Including that game against Dallas, where the Packers had the unbelievable comeback led by Matt Flynn. Which I do want to do a RePackables on that one at some point. Full disclosure, when we had the idea for this, I initially had 20 games that I was asked to put together. That was on the list. We've pared it down to 10. But if this is something that they allow me to keep doing, that 2013 game with Matt Flynn leading the improbable comeback against the Cowboys is certainly on the list. But yes, I talked myself into DeShone Kizer because I had no other options, Strouf. I don't want to be judged for this. We had no other options but to try to be positive about this because Aaron Rodgers had injured his knee. And it was, if you don't remember the play, you can go back and watch the game. You can go and look it up. But he tries to avoid the hit by ducking down, but he left his left leg out. And somebody fell on it on a sack. And the way the knee bends, you're thinking, that's for sure an ACL. For sure, this guy's out for the year. He couldn't even walk back to the locker room, had to be taken in a cart. So the whole thing, yes, I can understand why you would have. Do you still have the video? When this gets released, I think we need to release the video, if you still have it, of your WWE style promo declaring the season over.
Yeah, I think I can find it. I know I posted it on an app that lasted for 6 months where sports fans just make takes. And I cut this promo about, I'm in purgatory. I feel like a Bears fan. I'm in hell. The season's already over. I've waited 6 months to get over that crappy last season. And here we go again with DeShone freaking Kizer, something like that. Right. So I was so disappointed. I will try to find that for you. But yeah, and then, there was that 45-minute period where I think we were all trying to be positive around DeShone Kizer because this was the future, right? And then all of a sudden, Rodgers has a helmet on the sidelines in the third quarter. We're all thinking, okay, he must have got shot up with some cortisone or something because this is unbelievable, right? This is Giannis-esque, although that hadn't happened yet. The 2021 NBA playoffs where the Bucks ultimately won the title, and he fought through that knee injury.
But he missed games. Giannis missed games.
Rodgers missed half of a quarter. And a halftime period likely with the training staff. It's just unbelievable. And then he comes back into the game, Gabe, and it was rough a little bit early. But then that fourth quarter, the largest comeback, at least at that point in Packers history, 17 points. Randall Cobb, as you mentioned earlier, could move again. That great throw that ultimately led to the win. It was just an unbelievable comeback. And the guy was out of his mind, if you remember his post-game interview with Michelle.
Oh, yeah. And during one of, I don't know if it was a McAfee interview that's been done since, but Rodgers talking about how he's never really had painkillers before. It's well, we've got the post-game interview with Tafoya where things don't quite seem right, Aaron. So I don't know how much I believe you on that. But yes, the Packers were down 17-0 at the half. The defense, the Bears start with the ball. They march down, kick a field goal. So the Packers are down 20 by the time Aaron Rodgers gets the ball again. And it was kind of like you said, a little bit of a slow start for the Packers, in that third quarter, but they're able to get on the board. They at least march down and match the third quarter field goal with Mason Crosby, field goal. And you're feeling, okay, all right, the offense is moving. They're only down 17. I mean, it's going to take a lot, and it did take a lot. Most of the scoring ends up happening in the fourth quarter, including the Randall Cobb play that you mentioned gets a lot of the love. I think that the touchdown pass that he had early fourth quarter to Geronimo Allison, when you start factoring everything in, and I thought about this as the replays were happening, it might be one of the best throws in Aaron Rodgers' career, the touchdown pass to Geronimo Allison.
It's really funny you said that because I have that written down of the notes list I was making while I was watching this game back. I have Geronimo, best throw in a long time for Rodgers, right? It's up there with that Jared Cook throw against the Cowboys in the playoffs. It's up there with that throw to Jennings in the Super Bowl. It is one of the great throws over the shoulder, corner of the end zone. I don't know how he spotted it there. I don't know how Geronimo Allison caught it. And That's another guy who I guess just forgot had a flash in the pan. And a guy I was really excited about with the Packers was Geronimo Allison, especially after this play. And, 17 points in the fourth quarter didn't feel like 17 points in the fourth quarter when you had Aaron Rodgers. And I think this is something we're going to miss a ton going into this 2023 season. Even though he was, pilled out and on a bad knee, they showed all the replays of him dropping back and not really being able to put pressure on that knee. And he was still the most dangerous man in the NFL. And I think that's what we're Packers fans like you and I, Gabe, are going to miss so much in this Jordan Love era is like the late game instincts, the ability to make an insurmountable comeback feel probable, make it feel like it's actually very possible, because Rodgers did that so damn well, and he did it so much better than just about everybody else in the NFL, and he did it on a bad knee, and he was out of his mind. I mean, it's an unbelievable fourth quarter, one of the most memorable, if not the most memorable fourth quarter for Aaron Rodgers in his storied career as a Packer, with all these incredible comebacks and fourth quarter performances. This tops the list. I mean, it is just, I remembered how good it was, but I don't think I remembered how good it was in the same breath, because I watched this back and I'm still going to myself, holy, you know what? I can't remember that, he was down 17 in the fourth. He was down still 6, and they gave him the ball with 2:39 left. They were like, well, it's Aaron Rodgers. That's too much time. And he still scores a touchdown to take the lead before the 2-minute warning. Unbelievable.
Yeah, Randall Cobb with the catch and run there. Just to go back to the Geronimo Allison thing, and they highlight that touchdown pass a lot, and Chris Collinsworth is breaking down, Rodgers looking off. But I don't think they made a big enough deal, because when you think about throwing a deep pass the way it was, up the right sideline, drops it in the bucket, only where Allison can get it, against some pretty good defensive backs for the Chicago Bears. And by the way, I completely forgot about the whole Kyle Fuller thing.
Oh, yeah.
The Packers had, and they referenced it on the broadcast, that the Packers had offered him a big contract during the offseason. Bears ended up matching it. And more on Kyle Fuller in just a moment. But when you can't plant on your left foot, especially as a right-handed quarterback, and think about all the different torques of Rodgers and Favre and them just ripping a ball through and being able to finish on that left side. He threw that pass on one leg. Like, he wasn't really able to plant and rip through. It was just kind of off the back foot as he lobbed one up. It was just absolutely unbelievable. And that's why I rank it as one of Aaron Rodgers' best throws, because it came in an unbelievable comeback, but it also came where he's not at 100% and able to make the throw that he wants, make the throw the way he wants to make it. And yet he's still able to somehow miraculously pull off that pass.
Yeah, that's a really good call. And I think you're right about that. Collinsworth breaking it down was one thing. And, I already missed that team, by the way, of Michaels and Collinsworth on Sunday Night Football. I know it's only been a year, but they were so good together. And I guess I kind of forgot about that throw. Because the Cobb one, as you mentioned, right, it gets all the limelight, as it should, because that was one of the great Randall Cobb plays in a pretty long list against the Chicago Bears. And we'll get more to that in a second, I'm sure. But Rodgers, I mean, that's why we call him one of the most, if not the most talented quarterback of all time, because the guy can consistently do the unthinkable. And this one, to put the cherry on top, is the bad leg. And there's a short list of guys that can make a throw like that. Mahomes, Rodgers, that might be the list. Maybe Favre. That's it.
It's unbelievable with what he did with that throw. The other thing that stood out, I mean, Randall Cobb ended up having the big game in terms of 100-plus yards receiving, but in 2017, we started to get a taste of it, but we didn't get the full of it because of the injury to Rodgers. But Brett Hundley, Davante Adams still found a way to be productive in 2017 with Brett Hundley as his quarterback. And the touchdown that he had, where he just makes a sudden move, he makes the catch, makes the sudden move inside, defensive back overcommits, and he's able to go into the end zone. Watching this game back, you didn't get full at the height of his powers, Davante Adams with the Packers, but you could kind of start seeing some of the groundwork that he was laying to eventually become the Packers Hall of Famer that he will be, and maybe Pro Football Hall of Famer that he could potentially become.
Yeah, he certainly put together a good case. And I wrote this down. One of the broadcast remarks when he made that touchdown catch was, he's kind of become the Jordy Nelson of this team. And boy did he ever. But the trajectory, and this was kind of the thought process that I went through thinking back on this 2018 season, to your point, and the trajectory of Davante Adams' career as a Packer was, people were not crazy about him after his first 2 seasons, right? He had a couple drop issues. He wasn't like a number 1, number 2 guy. And this is really the point where it reached that level of, okay, I think Davante Adams can be that guy. And you still had Cobb, and we mentioned Geronimo Allison, who had a nice couple of year stint where, you thought maybe he was a nice number 2 or number 3 piece. But Davante Adams, this is where you really started seeing the flashes of greatness. He did have 5 catches in this game, and you're right, Cobb did have the big game, and Allison had that big touchdown catch. But Adams, this is where you really thought to yourself, okay, he's the number 1, and he probably can be the number 1, I should say. And it for how bad of a season this was, it was a really good one for Davante Adams when he was healthy. And I this was the beginning of it. And that remark made me laugh. He's become the Jordy Nelson of this team because he outdid Jordy Nelson minus the Super Bowl win with his tenure with the Packers.
The other thing that pointed out that stood out to me before we get to the game-winning touchdown for the Packers, the other thing that stood out to me in this game is Jimmy Graham was exactly how I remembered him. He was bad. Just bad. Like, he had a couple of catches, and then he gets out in the flat, tries to do the little shimmy shake with the shoulders. Nothing. There was another time where he caught the ball and almost was bracing himself to be tackled before the guy was anywhere near him. The Packers got the most washed version of Jimmy Graham. Couldn't break a tackle, couldn't use speed. And the few times that he touched the ball in this game, I was reminded of, oh yeah, this is exactly how I remember it. This guy was exactly as bad as I thought he was as a Packer, despite all of us, hand in the air, myself included, being excited that Jimmy Graham was going to be a Packer.
There was not one person in the world that thought this signing would be a flop. And that's why it goes down, if not one of the most overrated signings the Packers have made in the last decade, right? I mean, when he came in, we thought, oh boy, this is the first tight end they've had since Jermichael Finley, right? This guy's going to change the offense. He's going to be that middle of the field threat. During his time in both Seattle and New Orleans, he was one of the best receiving tight ends, and for a couple of years, the best receiving tight end in all of the NFL. And he comes to Green Bay, and it was just a total flop. It was a horrible experiment that probably should have never happened. And that's why I call it probably the most overrated signing in the last decade for the Packers. And you're right. This game was the epitome of his tenure as a Packer. It was just underwhelming. He was overhyped. And Aaron Rodgers, I remember during that offseason, he spoke the world of Jimmy Graham.
Oh, yeah.
And that never came to fruition.
They reference it on the broadcast, too. Like, Collinsworth is just waxing poetic. Oh, Rodgers is so excited to work with Jimmy Graham. Said he gets what we're doing around here. It's great to have somebody who can control the middle of the field. Unfortunately, that was not the version of Jimmy Graham that the Green Bay Packers got in the Jimmy Graham era, I guess, for lack of a better term. But the game-winning touchdown almost never happened. I completely forgot about that. It was the very first play. Kyle Fuller should have intercepted. Kyle Fuller should have had a pick six. Yeah. Very first play of the final drive for the Packers offense. Davante Adams slips, which Lambeau Field people slipping, that's been going on since 2018. But he slips and Kyle Fuller's right there. Rodgers throws it where he thinks Adams is going to be, but Adams had slipped and fallen down. And Kyle Fuller should have picked it off, and he had nobody in front of him, and he just dropped it, just straight up dropped it.
Yeah, so my 2 notes in a row that I will read you verbatim. It says 239 down 6, even on pills and a bad knee. It's too much time for Aaron Rodgers. Then the very next note says, Kyle Fuller drop, 236. Glad he wasn't a Packer. Because, I think this was the moment. And you'll remember this, Gabe. Obviously, you were on the air during this time with this whole Kyle Fuller shenanigans in that previous offseason where the Packers made him a giant offer. The Bears matched it. He stayed with the Bears. And we were all like, crap, that could have been a really good addition for the Packers, right? He had a really solid year in 2017. They referenced the drop troubles he had in 2017, but still a good year for a corner after he made this drop that should have ended the game. The Bears should have won this game. And thankfully, the Packers legend, not really though, Kyle Fuller, makes another horrendous. This could not have been a better spot for Kyle. There wasn't a better spot on the field for Kyle Fuller to be than the spot he was, and it just slipped through his hands. And that allowed 20 seconds later, Randall Cobb to run as fast as I've ever seen that man run. Maybe not, but close to it to score the game-winning touchdown. I'm very glad that didn't work out in the Packers' favor. It worked out with him re-signing a giant contract with the Bears, and he won the Packers Week 1 game in 2018.
Well, if you want to stretch it out even further and play the what if game with Kyle Fuller, if the Bears don't match that offer, do the Packers draft Jair Alexander?
Probably not.
Who, again, made his rookie debut and had a couple of nice plays in this game as well, especially late. So Jair is probably not a Packer right now if the Bears don't match that offer. So he drops it. The next play is not a great one. Rodgers under pressure, had to get rid of it quickly because, well, I mean, Khalil Mack is doing Khalil Mack things. And Rodgers extends that third down play just enough rolling to his left and finds Randall Cobb in the middle of the field after the first defender misses. He's just off to the races. Especially watching the Packers the last 2 years and watching Randall Cobb and what he's become. Like, Cobb can find the soft spot in the zone. He's got that connection with Rodgers. Mm-hmm. But it was fun to remember just how good and how fast Randall Cobb was even back in 2018.
Yeah, you forget about that. And he had so many moments, like I referred to earlier, Gabe, against the Bears specifically. The divisional game, I don't remember what year it was off the top of my head. Was that 2010? No, he wasn't around in 2010. So 2012 or 2014, whatever it was, when they win the division against the Bears on that play. They win week 1 this year. And he was the Bear killer. Like that was what Randall Cobb was best at, was scoring game-winning touchdowns against the rival Chicago Bears. And, Aaron Rodgers, as much credit as we give him for this game, didn't do a lot on that play. Saw the opening for, a quick, what would you say, 5-7 yard dump off pass in the middle of the field, and Randall Cobb did the rest. And I remember, he ran like 70 yards, but he made it feel like 140 with the way he ran around the field, and then got the sideline and cut back in and then cut back out. He was so quick, and that's what made us love him. Because you think back to even his debut in 2011, that opening game against the Saints, where he had the return for a touchdown in his rookie debut. And, that was when you knew, okay, this guy's special. And he had a great tenure when he was healthy with the Packers. And even, I think we crap on his second chapter, which obviously comes to an end now with the Packers. He was still a fine piece. And of course, it's a huge part with the rapport he built with Rodgers throughout the course of over a decade. But he was still fine. I mean, he wasn't that great last year because he was injured for more than half the season, if my memory serves me correct. So I don't know. Like, I think we were too hard on Randall Cobb's second chapter. Would he be in the league if it wasn't for Aaron Rodgers last year and
probably not
this year? No, he wouldn't be. Right? Like, I could say that with confidence. But the rapport that those two have, you can't build with a rookie. And I think that was proven to us last year as well, during Aaron Rodgers' final season in Green Bay. So this was such a special connection, and it made it even more bittersweet thinking to them walking off the field together 6 months ago after the loss to the Lions, and seeing this play, the highest of highs of the moments those two had together in green and gold. And then thinking back just 6.5 months ago to them walking off the field together with their arms around one another. It's like, that was still such a cool chapter in Packers history, and our Packers fandom was the Rodgers to Cobb. Although it was never the number one connection, it was such a good one and so consistent, and it bled into this 2018 week 1 game.
Now, the only problem with scoring before the 2-minute warning is there were still 2 minutes left for the Packers defense to somehow blow it. And we got, as was the, it seemed like it happened quite often at this part of the Clay Matthews era.
Oh, yeah.
A questionable roughing the passer penalty. I mean, I guess he kind of hit him high. I remember thinking at the time that was super questionable, but maybe because over the last 5 years, as the NFL has continued to trend that way of really protecting the quarterbacks, like through my 2023 prism of what the NFL is now, I look at that and go, yeah, it's probably roughing the passer. Even though it's not in 1995, it's not in 2005, but in 2018 when they were really trying to protect. But I think that especially at the time, like we were really protective of Clay Matthews because he had gotten some bogus ones with the weight on the quarterback thing in previous seasons. So I think we were a little more upset than if you watch it back now, you're probably going to watch it and go, yeah, I guess that's roughing the passer.
Yeah, I felt the same exact way. And I remembered my reaction. I jumped off the couch. I think I may have thrown like an empty beer can at that point. I was very angry when that happened in the moment. Watching it back, I was like, yeah, this is the scenario sucks though, right? It's fourth down. The game comes down to this. He throws a duck. If Clay wouldn't have hit him at all, it still would have been an incomplete pass. Mm-hmm. And Clay hits him. And then you're like, man, that's the right call, though. 5 years removed, I can say that when I'm not watching it with my complete green and gold colored glasses on, right? So, yeah, and we were protective over Clay because he was so good at his highs. And of course, this was kind of the low points of Clay. and that sucks. But it led up to the moment that I do want to talk about before we wrap up, which was Jair, right? Because Jair didn't play a ton in this game, but this was when I think we all realized Goody in his first draft had something here, right? His first pick that he moved back to get the corner out of Louisville. You could tell from the moment the Sunday Night Football patented intro videos played, right? Jair Alexander, University of Louisville. Right there, you knew he had the swag that we see at an all-time high level today in 2023. But then the last play, or the last defensive play of the game, the pass breakup he has, where he's in the middle of it, he had a great read on the ball. Like right away, you knew instinctually this kid has it, which I think he's older than me. I shouldn't call him a kid, but you view it.
It's fine.
Yeah, whatever. You know what I mean. And it's just like, yeah, he's got it. And, it took a while for him to fully piece it together to the top 100 player he is now in the league. But that was the first flash of, Goody, you know how to draft. And the jury may still be out of that 6 years later, 6 drafts later. But that was the first flash of, hey, Jair might be the guy.
So you bring up the intros because it was a Sunday night game and the players do the intros. And this was right around when Chris Collinsworth had made that investment into Pro Football Focus. So they would list the PFF scores of different players. And the Packers had a couple rookies on that defense. Not only did they have Jair, they also had Josh Jackson, who was their second round pick. I don't know if you noticed this, but I did. And I had to, again, I'm watching this by myself, right? Like I'm watching this by myself in my living room. I had to hit pause and just chuckle because I didn't want to miss what was happening next, because Josh Jackson's Pro Football Focus rating of all the draftable corners.
I missed this.
Number 1.
Really?
He was the number 1 rated Pro Football Focus corner in college football the year previous. And obviously, I mean, and look, I understand why. Like he had those 2 pick sixes against Ohio State. Like he had a monster year at Iowa. So I can understand how that would translate to whatever the Pro Football Focus grading system is. But he was number 1 of all the cornerbacks in all of college football in 2017. And like I saw that, and then knowing, how Josh Jackson's career would end up play out for the Green Bay Packers, it just made me laugh.
One of the biggest disappointments, because I have a Big Ten bias. I'm very open about this when it comes to college football players and then drafted as Packers, right? Like Jaden Reed's the one this year I'm in love with because I watched him single-handedly beat the Badgers last year. Josh Jackson, I was in love with. I thought it was a great pick. I thought he would be a staple as a Packer for over a decade. And boy, was I wrong. And I also, I took my continuous notes. Josh Jackson, a starter. Ha, ha, ha.
So was Ha Clinton Dix.
Yeah. And that, by the way, Gabe, that was the other jersey I bought. So the 2 Packers jerseys I had in the 2018 season were Ha Clinton Dix and Ty Montgomery. And they both were traded on the same day, the trade deadline later, 8 weeks after this or whatever it was at the end of October. So I have not bought a Packers jersey since, and I don't know that I ever will again.
I mean, this game really the only highlight of the 2018 season for the Packers. They would tie the Vikings the next week. We went over the disastrous game against the Rams where they had an opportunity to win. Would have a lot of tight games, just couldn't win in the end. That ultimately cost Mike McCarthy his job in the middle of the season after a 2017 loss to the Arizona Cardinals. Joe Philbin takes over. They go 2-2 in their last 4 games, missed the playoffs at 6-9-1. And then the era that we're in now begins under Matt LaFleur. Before we wrap this thing up and just kind of look past what happened in 2018, are you with me in that you think Mike McCarthy should have at least been able to complete the season? Because Joe Philbin wasn't saving it, and I just don't like that move from this man won you a Super Bowl. The season's not going to be saved. Everybody knows you're letting him go in the middle of the season. Like there was no reason to do it. And everyone knows you're going to do it at the end of the season. There was no reason for me to do it because you weren't saving anything at that point in the 2018 season.
You're right, but I go back and forth on this, and it's the same thing with Paul Chryst at Wisconsin last year, right? When he was fired midseason. I struggle with midseason firings for the most part, especially a guy like McCarthy, who accomplished a hell of a lot more than Paul Chryst, who I just compared him to. Obviously, won the Super Bowl, has a street named after him, won 1 million division titles. Helped bring this team back. Bring the Lombardi back to this team, and so I do struggle with it. However, that loss to Arizona was just awful.
Oh, it was terrible.
It was awful, and I just don't know how you face that group of guys again and have them fully trust you. Whereas Joe Philbin had been I think at this point, had he already been the head coach of the Dolphins?
Yeah. He came back this year and was.
That's right.
I don't even think he was the offensive coordinator because I think that was Edgar Bennett. But like
I think Bennett was fired. I think Philbin replaced him, if my memory serves me.
Yeah, they had kind of put him in a position where he was like the associate head coach. They had figured out a way to bring him back. So he had been a head coach with the Miami Dolphins at that point.
Yeah, and so just looking back on it, it was just like, wow, that Arizona loss was so bad. I just don't know how you control a group after that and give Joe Philbin a shot, who has head coaching experience at that point. But again, nobody was saving anything. You knew it was a lost cause after that. After that Arizona loss, which is one of the worst, maybe ever. At least when this team was expected to be as good as they were for the majority of that decade. I don't know how you bring him back, but I'm not against it. I do have a hard time with midseason firings because you have time to go find your next head coach, right? Matt LaFleur is still the head coach of the Packers if Mike McCarthy coaches 3 or 4 more.
Correct.
So I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion either way, but it was still a tough loss, that Arizona loss. That season was so rough. Back-to-back missing the playoff seasons. You knew McCarthy wasn't coming back in 19. And look, LaFleur ended up working out really well. So the way things worked out, and this was the first year of Goody, right? So you have Jair, the first round pick in the draft. You have a lost season. He has the cojones to fire a Super Bowl winning coach after missing the season or missing the playoffs back.
Well, Murphy's the one who did it because Murphy reorganized it before he hired Goody. So Murphy is the one who pulled that trigger.
Which I still hate that, but that's beside the point. But then you go out and Mark Murphy and Goody hire LaFleur, which ultimately was a home run hire. We'll find out more about him here in 2023 with a brand new quarterback under center. But I think through 4 years as the head coach, the guy's earned the benefit of the doubt. And this is just a weird chapter in the Aaron Rodgers saga, right? This is kind of the beginning of the end before, 2 years prior to Jordan Love being drafted and 2 years prior to Rodgers winning his first of back-to-back MVPs. But this game, the Chicago Week 1 game, goes down as one of my all-time favorites for Aaron Rodgers and probably my all-time favorite post-game interview with Michelle Tafoya. My knee!
Well, Aaron, what was wrong? My knee!
My knee! Forgot how tripped out he was. Yeah.
Oh, man. He's trying to control it. The whole thing's hilarious. You can find it on YouTube if you want to go back and watch that interview. Stroufy, thank you so much for the time and jumping on and reminiscing on the lone good game from the 2018 Green Bay Packers season.
Yeah, anytime, man. This was a blast. It was fun watching it back last night. And like I said, I didn't realize Clay Matthews was still around. There's so many parts of this game. I forgot. The 2 parts I remembered for sure was the knee injury and the Cobb touchdown and Khalil Mack having a day, right? He had the fumble recovery, the forced fumble, the interception, the touchdown, sacked. I mean, he just had the most unbelievable debut for the Bears. But some of those other parts I just didn't remember. So it was really fun to go back and watch because the Packers, which they didn't do a lot of in 2018, they won this game.
This has been Repackables of that 2018 opener against the Chicago Bears. Make sure you tune in again next week as we continue packed summer here on ESPN Wisconsin. Sitting here talking with Truman McGee of Funky Fresh Spring Rolls. All right, so how did Funky Fresh get started?
Yeah, so 10 years ago, almost to the day, I was a laid-off construction worker, had to move back into my parents' house and restart my life. I was almost 30, going bald, overweight, all the things that men are afraid of. And I say, no, I need to do something with my life. So I started literally making healthier meals out of my parents' kitchen. From there, my father was a Vietnam vet, man's man. He loved these sweet potato and black bean spring rolls. And I thought, my dad loved it, anybody loved it. So we started getting to farmers markets, festivals. We opened our first location in the Sherman Phoenix in 2018. And kind of the rest is history. We kind of just grew from there.
Just kind of continuing to grow and grow and grow. So where do you have places now? What are we talking about? What's the next step for Funky Fresh?
So from the Sherman Phoenix, then COVID happened. We had to figure out how to readjust and pivot, and we started to sell our spring rolls frozen directly to customers. And then we got into some couple local grocery stores. And then in 2022, we partnered with Palermo's, and they've been helping us expand our product. And now we are found in over 150 grocery stores in Wisconsin and Illinois.
How many different flavors do you have?
We got 4 flavors. We got our buffalo chicken and kale. I say kale, yeah. Chicken, broccoli, and mushroom, chicken club. And we got a sweet potato black bean, which is our #1 seller.
So is the sweet potato and black bean, is that your favorite because of the tie with your family?
It has to be. It's the OG roll. You know, my son says I'm shaped like a sweet potato. So you know what? That's fine. And that's going to be my OG flavor. That, for me, it has the most sentimental value because it's the firstborn of the company.
So what are your next steps? What are you looking to do with Funky Fresh now?
So now what we've done is 150 store tests. We've got a lot of feedback from our customers and being able to improve our product. And now we're looking at expansion. So our big goal for 2024 is to be able to expand nationwide, get our product out, get the best version of our product out, and get it out across the country.
All right, hit us with those 4 flavors once again.
All right, we got our buffalo chicken and
Buffalo
kale,
chicken and kale,
chicken club,
chicken club,
chicken broccoli mushroom,
chicken broccoli and mushroom,
and the sweet potato black bean.
Sweet potato black bean. You can find them all around the Milwaukee area, different grocery stores all over the place.
Woodman, Syndics, Outposts, festivals. You go to funkyfreshspringrolls.com to check out a full list of where all our stores are at.
All right. Well, Truman, thank you so much for the time, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Again, and thank you to Funky Fresh for being part of RePackables right here on ESPN.